My acne was so bad, I used to pretend to be ill so I didn't have to go to school. There's actually barely any pictures of me as a teenager because honestly, I hated the way I looked and I was never happy seeing my friends enjoy themselves without acne while I was stuck with it. Like these cases on screen, which I'll explain in this video, I just wanted someone to wave a magic wand and make it disappear. But now I've gone from that to having worked with over 10,000 patients and having taught over 10,000 doctors all around the world in the fields of cosmetic and longevity medicine over more than a decade now. I've got no affiliate links here, no discount codes, just knowledge, right? If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Abs. After my undergrad in dentistry, I went on to do multiple other qualifications as a postgraduate and decided that dermatology at the Royal College of Physicians would be one of those. This video is more than 10 years in the making, and it's going to have some hard truths for you to swallow because, let me start now. There's no magic pill that disappears acne never to return again. And if you're after some quick 30-second video that gives you 3 easy steps to banish it forever, then that's possibly why you're here still looking for answers. You need to start by investing some time and effort into educating yourself on the conditions first. Here's what's coming up. We've got all of these topics: diet, devices, injectables, skincare, supplements, medication, and sort of overall advice to bring everything together. We're going to work through those. There'll be chapters as well, so you can jump between them. But word of advice: do not skip the first one. It's all very well and good doing XYZ to get rid of the acne. That's not that difficult nowadays. But what about 6 months later? What if it comes back? The money you've spent, the time you've invested, the effort you put in, it will just be wasted. And so you have to really consider, when it comes to acne, the most important thing is, are you actually treating it, or are you trying to cover up some symptoms which can then reappear later anyway? This is really, really key. And some of you may think, oh, what's the best skincare? Well, think about it this way. Acne is not caused by lack of skincare, clearly. And so if you think skincare is a solution, you're not treating the root cause. This is what I try and do in clinic every single time, because the way I try and treat acne now, I do it in such a way that it doesn't really come back ever for every single person. We have to find the root cause. It can be slow and tiresome, but that's the key. That's the perspective you should have throughout this video and in your entire journey in trying to get rid of acne, personally, anyway. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is diet. This isn't wishy-washy. I'm not going to say don't eat processed food, or general stuff like that. I'm not going to say the obvious things. I'm going to say things which I never knew as a teenager when I had really bad acne, and most of my patients don't know either. Think about it this way. When we think about our ancestors, they didn't have a lot of the conditions and problems that we have today. And isn't that a bit strange? You have to ask why. And one of the major key differences between now and our ancestors is the food that we eat. We have way more disease now than we ever have. We also have way more medical technology than before. How does that make sense? Well, the food that we eat is no longer the same. The quality of the food is not as good. We're not eating the same foods themselves as our ancestors. And aside from saying things like, don't eat McDonald's every day, avoid the fizzy drinks, all that kind of stuff, there's actually, when it comes to acne, something very, very crucial. And this is something that I've found clinically is very, very important. It's the first thing we go to when I have an acne patient. So I'm going to talk about something called lectins, Lectins, N for November. A lot of people haven't heard of lectins, which is which is okay, because it's not really something I was taught at university, and I think most people aren't taught at university either. But you have to look at what an autoimmune condition is. Now, you could argue that there are elements of acne which seem autoimmune in nature. And you may think autoimmune, well, that's things like multiple sclerosis. Why is he talking about that? Just bear with me. You see, in our gut, we have microvilli, okay? We have enteric cells, cells which line our gut and determine what goes from the outside world into our bodies. And on these cells, we have these finger-like projections, as they always say in medical textbooks. And these finger-like projections, and if the cell was this shape, like a square, then the surface area it has is the perimeter of the square to absorb whatever it needs to bring into our body. But if it was like that and then had all these growths coming off it, the surface area, as you can see on screen now, is much, much larger like this, okay? And so because the surface area is enlarged, that means there's more positions, if you like, for things to be absorbed into the body. So it's much more efficient as a cell if it does that. So for a given volume of the cell, if the shape is like this, it can maximize the surface area to volume ratio. If you've done A-level biology, I'm sure you've heard that phrase many times. And so what happens is these have to be like that in order for them to work efficiently, or as efficiently as possible. Sometimes what happens is this: they close up. And so the surface area to volume ratio now is nowhere near as efficient, as good as it needs to be for maximum or optimal efficiency of the cell's function. What kind of things do this? And, what kind of things destroy the integrity of these things? These cells are meant to line up like that, very, very tight junction proteins. And what happens is sometimes they can also have a little gap. They can loosen very slightly. So it's like bricks in a wall and there's cement between the bricks. Sometimes there's a bit of wear and tear and ants can get through. And then, if that's your house wall, you've got ants coming into your house. So you go around trying to whack things to get rid of the ants, to kill them all. Think that's a good analogy for what's happening in the gut. So when you look at lectins, lectins are proteins. Isn't a full diet lecture, by the way. I have a video on lectins. I'll link it in the description below, but I want to give you a summary here. Otherwise, there's no point in doing the video. Lectins are proteins with carbohydrate binding moieties. And what happens is they can cause the integrity of our gut lining, of our gut cells, to disintegrate very slightly. And so what happens is when you have this gap that slightly appeared, these things can enter the body. And so these are the ants going through the wall into your house. You're casually watching TV and you see some ants running around. You get your whatever, your slipper or something like that, and you just go around whacking everything. Your immune system is seeing the ants come through the wall and it thinks we need to attack. Okay, people describe autoimmune conditions as the body attacking itself. Just pause for a minute and just apply common sense. Why would we have evolved to attack ourselves for no reason? We would have died out, millions of years ago if we had some sort of genetic programming to make us attack ourselves. It makes literally no sense whatsoever. It makes more sense that it's to try and get some sort of intruder that the body senses or sees in some way. When we have lectins, they are highly, highly implicated, as we see from many, many anecdotes and evidence of real life cases, real life patients, that when we get rid of these lectins, these incredible things start to happen. Now, when we take out lectins in the diet, which I do practically every single patient that comes to me, very, very miraculously, we see many, many things clear up at the same time. It's not instantaneous, and I'll tell you why in a second. But this is something that you need to understand if you're really trying to get rid of acne, because root cause is essential. Like I said, do you want to treat the condition, or do you want to play whack-a-mole and cover the symptoms as they come up, which you'll just keep on doing for the rest of your life because symptoms will keep coming up if you don't actually treat the root cause? And diet is key, absolutely key. Now, lectins are in many, many different foods. Personally, I don't really have to worry about lectins because personally I eat, as some of you know on this channel, I eat a carnivore diet and I'm doing very, very well, exceptionally well. I'm very happy with it. And so when patients come to see me, they don't have to do the same. I don't insist on that whatsoever, but generally they tend to go in my direction in terms of dietary habits. And we see all sorts of improvements all at the same time, including skin conditions. Now, if you don't believe me, I know many of you won't, and you may think, well, my diet's pretty healthy. Just take 2 minutes to go and look, on Google, on YouTube, wherever, people that have had, whatever skin condition and then gone carnivore or similar, and it's just spontaneously resolved. Type in, carnivore diet acne or something like that, and you'll see many, many cases. Now, there are more things to it than that in terms of the diet, but that's in my opinion, that is the biggest thing completely. And this is, in fact, this lectin topic, like I said, I'll put a video link in the description below. But also, if you are a member of my online school group, If you click on live, call archive in the classroom tab, there's a video we did specifically about lectins that'll give you some more information. And in fact, those of you who are watching this video, the idea of going into acne in as much detail as is reasonably possible in one video, it came from my school group. We had a video call on this and I thought, people are clearly interested. Let's make a massive video specifically just on this topic. Now, when you see the lectins, does that mean, right, well, you just suddenly cut everything out in your diet? Not necessarily. See, your gut bacteria are used to eating whatever you feed them, whatever you put in your mouth. If tomorrow you decide, right, I'm going to change diet completely, you're going to have serious issues, okay? Your bacteria are probably going to eat you instead of the thing they're normally used to. This is why when people change diets very suddenly, they generally tend to think that diet's not good for them because it gives them some trouble. It's not that the diet's not good for them necessarily. The speed of transition is very, very crucial as to whether your body can actually cope with it or not. And so changing diet suddenly, just because I've said lectins are key, is not a good idea. Typically, clinically, what I do is we transition patients for anywhere from, say, 4 weeks, if it's very, very quick, to 9 months even, in terms of a dietary change to come into the new diet. And over that time, yeah, things start to improve. How do you do that? Honestly, I cannot give you individual advice in a generic video like this. I can't make a video for all 8 billion people on the planet. It's incredibly individual. It depends on what you're eating now, your general lifestyle, your medical history, any medical problems that you take, any medications, any allergies, all these sorts of things. It's incredibly individual. But what you should do as a general rule is to cut down. The way we do it in acne is the way we cut down the number of different foods that people have as much as possible. And typically, it just goes. Might take a while, but it goes. Then we slowly add one food back and back and back. This is what's called an elimination diet. Once we add one thing back, if suddenly, like that, a load of spots appear the next day, there's that food. That food is really critical. As an example, when I was a teenager, you may not have heard of this restaurant if you're not from the UK, but there's a restaurant in the UK called Nando's. I noticed that whenever I went to Nando's, the next day my acne got much worse. And the dermatologist told me, no, there's no link whatsoever, don't worry about it. I'm like, well, I can see it. Every time I go, I can predict the next day something's going to happen. And it did every single time. I think diet is absolutely key. And the transition, like I said, if you can go into something like an elimination diet, slowly add one thing back, you'll notice that change. It's easier said than done, and it's very subtle in the best way to do it. But like I said, I can't give individual advice here. But to give you an example, one of the members of my school group, I think his name was Matthew, I can't remember. If you're in the school group, actually, you can search in the bar and find his post. His rosacea completely disappeared when he went towards carnivore, completely. And one day he thought, I'm going to try some Brussels sprouts. Now, why he'd want to do that, I don't know, but he tried Brussels sprouts. And the next day, his rosacea came back. And he knew straight away. He's found one of the links at least. If there is more than one, potentially there's another, but he found at least one trigger for his rosacea. And we do the same thing for acne. Now, like I said, diet is very key. If you skip this, I know it sounds like it's a lot of effort. It's going to take a long time to figure all this out, but you're not really treating the root cause. And it makes sense that diet is one of the key root causes because it's the thing that's changed the most, or one of the things that's changed the most between now and our ancestors. And yet we have so much more disease, like I said. So I will link to those videos in the description below, but please don't skip diet. It's incredibly important. Look up lectins, look up all the different ones that you have in potatoes and gluten. Gluten is a lectin. I'm sure you've heard of that. Chilies, all these things have them. If you drop one food group and you still eat a load of others at the same time, you might think, oh, that, it hasn't worked. It's not that, it hasn't worked. It's that you need to drop all of them and then slowly add one back, not remove one by one. That's the way you need to do it. But anyway, the next step I have here is devices. So the right perspective on devices is that you're not treating the root cause. Okay, I'll say it this way. Acne is not caused by a lack of device. Let's say LED, we're going to talk about LED now. Acne is not caused by a lack of LED treatment. I'm stating the obvious, you know that. Or if you know that, then you should be able to say by logic that LED treatment is not treating acne. Okay, LED treatment is very good, as I'm about to show you, but it's not treating it. It is merely reducing the symptoms. And it may be able to reduce symptoms so much you can't see any acne, but you haven't treated it still because it's not root cause, which again comes back to diet if possible. So like I said, LED, we'll start with that. Now, some people may also look at IPL, intense pulse light. For all intents and purposes of this video, don't think of them as that different. They can both try and treat the symptoms or mask the symptoms as well as possible. I'm going to use the phrase LED, but you can apply it to IPL as well. With the technology that we have in LED technology nowadays, as I'm going to mention some devices here, with the power level that you can reach, you don't absolutely need IPL anymore. And so LEDs is all you need. Why should you look at LED when it comes to acne? Why is it worth your attention? Because it is, first of all, it is completely non-invasive. There's literally not even contact with your skin. So the safety profile is incredibly, incredibly high if you know how to use it properly. When you use things like medication, which we'll talk about in this video as well, or is anything to do with a needle and injections and things like that, they carry certain risk profiles, as I'm sure you can imagine. But when you use LED, the fact that it's not even touching you means it's a very, very low risk profile. So the safety is very high. This means for the vast, 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 vast majority of people, it's worth a try very early on, because you know if you do it right, you're not really going to make anything worse. Now, you can make it worse if you get it wrong in LED, but I'll talk about that now. And so the safety profile is very, very good. As well as that, the barrier to entry nowadays is actually very, very low if you know where to look. You know, LED itself, once you understand how it works, and I'm going to say that now as well, you realize why it can be so effective. For instance, if you look at the blue light, which is very crucial for acne, not red, blue, that blue, as soon as it strikes the bacterium, you know, it hits a porphyrin contained within the bacterium, and that generates a reactive oxygen species, an ROS. This is a highly unstable molecule that you think of it as a ping pong ball in one of those machines. And when it ping pongs around, or pinball machine, I should say, when it pinballs around, it can cause catastrophic structural failure. And so the bacterium dies. That's instantaneous. You know, if you take a drug, the issue you've got is you've got to wait till it's going into the digestive system and then into your body, and then everything else touches it as well. And eventually there's got to be enough left over to actually hit the acne bacteria. And then you've got to cross your fingers and hope that it does its thing, which it might. Whereas this, you don't have to worry about that. There's no roots through the body. It's direct into the bacterium there. So as soon as it's hit the bacterium, that effect is taking place. It's like a hammer and a nail. It's happening there and then, right there. You don't have to wait for a process to complete. As soon as you do it, it's done. And so the radiation, when that is going and hitting the bacteria, that's happening there and then with the process that I've just described. And so it can be very, very quick and very, very effective. Now, the other two lights the other two colors, if you like, that we have clinically speaking are near infrared and red. I'll leave red for the end because that can make it worse, and I'll show you proof of that today. But near infrared, essentially, you can think of that, without being too technical, as anti-inflammatory. And as I'm sure you can imagine, with acne having a lot of redness involved, there's inflammation involved in acne. There's inflammation as a crucial part of acne's pathophysiology. And so if you add near infrared into your protocol, you're immediately going to sort of reduce that pathophysiological momentum as much as possible. I'm trying not to use words that are too technical here, but you're going to help that. Now, there's no such thing as not enough inflammation in the skin. We don't need it, okay? If there's a wound and there's something to heal, fine. Inflammation is good. It alerts us to where the body has to go and heal something and repair something. That makes sense. But for general natural homeostasis and physiology, we don't need inflammation. It's not good for us. And so when we add near infrared, there is no such thing as too much near infrared from what I've seen clinically in my personal experience. Like I said, I've been working here in it for over 10 years, and with LED specifically, high-powered LED, for about 6 years now. And I use near infrared in every single clinical case. Never had an issue with it whatsoever. So just bang in the near infrared as much as you can in terms of the power level, and you'll be absolutely fine. Last one is the red light. When people think of phototherapy or LED technology, typically they will actually phrase it as red light therapy, RLT. Now, I get it. It's red. It stands out on social media as a color, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But actually, you should think about it as LED therapy or phototherapy. And red is merely one of those wavelengths that's involved in these things. Now, red can potentially make things worse. Why is that? Well, red, essentially what that's doing is and I'm missing lots out here, by the way, so bear in mind what I'm about to say is in that context. But essentially, it's trying to increase the activity of the cell. So if a cell is doing well, it's just going to make it try and do even more well. Very, very simplified there. And like I said, I've missed a lot out there. But if, let's say, the majority of the activity in that region that is being irradiated is inflamed, you then add red into there, well, it's just going to make it more inflamed, make more problems, essentially. And so that's why red is not an automatic default choice when it comes to acne. Some people with very mild acne will use red light and they will have a good result. I'm not saying you can't, but when it's severe and the majority of the area is highly, highly inflamed, adding red isn't necessarily going to help you. And if you don't believe me, I have a video, I'll link it in the description below, of a patient with pretty severe acne. And I referred her for LED technology, for LED treatment, I should say. And I specifically said, don't use red light for this patient. Now, she went off to the clinic that I referred to. Now, the goggles weren't on fully, okay? They wasn't unsafe, but they weren't fully on. And she could see at the side of the goggles what color was being shined on her face. And she could see red. And she said to me straight away, look, they use red. And immediately after the treatment, the acne was so much more angry and so much worse. And, I felt really bad for her. I said, look, I'm so sorry that happened to you. We had another appointment. And I said, look, don't lose faith. Let me refer you somewhere else, somewhere that will actually listen to my protocol. So I referred her to someone else. And that someone else, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it now, but I think it was somewhere in London. I can't remember. But that somewhere else listened to my referral. And they did not use red. They used the blue and near infrared. And this patient, she finished the treatment and same day, it looked so much better. That's the difference, okay? So you've got to be very careful. Some of you may now think, well, how do I know then if I need to use red or not? Honestly, like if you comment, should I use red or not? My acne is like this. I genuinely can't help. I need to see the skin. I need an actual consultation to figure it out. I need the history of it. I need, your medications, your allergies, any of the medical conditions, etc., etc. There's no blanket answer, and a lot of people will buy LED devices, and I'll go through which ones I recommend here. I don't sell any, by the way, and they use them at home thinking, oh, I'll use red because red's the really good one, and it makes the acne worse. This is why. So you've got to be very, very careful. Now, the issue with creating these protocols and going to someone who may or may not have experience in LED treatments or dermatology or combination or something along those lines is you go along, and this is a real problem in the industry, and I'm sure you felt it as a patient, some of you. You go along, you have your appointment, you have the consultation, you get a load of information. You may not actually remember it all, the information, and then you come away and then you've got a new problem or a change to the problem or more questions. You can't keep making more and more appointments. Like, you're going to run out of cash at some point. And so this is why I actually changed the way I work when I work with patients one-to-one, not just for acne, but anything, even diet transitions, whatever. What we do is I have a group online. It's a one-to-one group. In fact, I'll link it in the description if you want to have a look. But it's a one-to-one supervision group. And everything in there is written. So they never have to remember anything. And they can go back as far as they want. Everything is there. And I have a guy who's in the one-to-one group now at the time of recording. I won't say his name, but if you join, you can see it in there. He's got skin problems. There's acne on his skin. And we are using LED technology currently. And I'll tell you which device we're using. But here's the thing. We have a conversation, at least in some periods, every single day. We actually changed that protocol. It'll do one day. He'll report back how it went, how it looks, how it feels. Okay, next day do this instead. That's better. Okay, let's do that again. Oh, went this way. Now let's change it again. Every day. You can't do that in a traditional consultation setting. But in the way I work in that, it's much, much easier. And they're not paying any more. They just pay one fee to be in that group. It's like a monthly fee. And then that's it. We just keep on working together for as long as is needed to get it right. Now, I'm not trying to advertise that. It's available if you want. But the reason I'm saying it is because if other clinicians watching this see that actually that's a way to better help our patients, then maybe they can offer that as well. But this is the issue with LED. When you want a protocol, it's not just about getting the protocol. The protocol changes, right? It changes sometimes, like I said, on a daily basis based on the response that we get from the skin, or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. It's never the same. And so it's very, very difficult to reply to comments and saying what protocol should I use. Well, I've got no idea because I can't see your skin. And I'm not saying even if I give you a protocol, I'll be right for next week or the week after. This is the inherent problem with LED technology. It's great when you use it correctly. Using it correctly isn't easy if you're just a general member of the public. A lot of people will just do it themselves and they get great results, fine. I'm not talking about those people here. I'm talking about people that do have issues and they need it to be individualized. Now, which devices? So I've just got my notes here so I don't miss anything. So which device do I recommend? Well, first of all, at least at the time of recording, I don't sell any devices. So the ones I'm about to mention, I don't make any money. I don't get any kickbacks. They don't take me out for some steak, hint, hint, or anything like that. This is a genuine recommendation. The first one I'm going to mention, I've been using this clinically now for 6 years. And this is the highest powered LED device in the world, at least at the time of recording. That power level is 240 joules per square centimeter over 1200 seconds. That is the Dermalux TriWave MD, DERMALUX, all one word, Dermalux TriWave MD. Like I said, this I think came out in 2019. It was, and at the time, and still is, as far as I'm aware, the highest powered LED device there is. The issue with this is generally it's designed for clinics. So as a member of the public, you're not really going to be buying this for your house unless you've got 20 to 25,000 pounds or dollars or euros lying around somewhere. Now, some of my patients do have this in their house because they do very well for themselves and I love it. It's great. That's fine. However, when you are a patient, if you want this device, you're simply going to have to go to a clinic that has the device. That's all. What you need to do if you want this is to go onto the manufacturer website, type in where you are as like a clinic finder or locator, and they will show you his nearby. The issue with Dermalux and the people that use Dermalux is some clinics, because their budget is quite low, which is fair enough, nothing wrong with that at all, they will use a lower power device because that's all they can afford, but they still want to help the patients. No, that's fine. I have no issue with people simply buying what they can afford. But when you have the lower powered device, and I'll tell you what they are now, you're going to get less biological change per unit time. So the TriWave MD is the top of the range device from Dermalux, or Dermalux is the brand name, company's aesthetic technology based in the UK. And then they have the Compact MD, and then they have the home use, which is the Flex MD. The Flex MD is very flexible, as you can tell, and it goes around in a dome. And you simply lie down and it goes over your face. Now, that's their full range. Like I said, the TriWave MD is the one you want in clinic. So if you're going to go on the website, look for someone near you that has it, make sure you see which device they have and go for someone that has the TriWave MD. Most people are going to charge you the same amount of money for all three devices. But actually, if you pay the same amount of money, you're getting more or less radiation put into the skin depending on which device they have. So what you want is to pay the same amount of money for the top of the range device. That's where you want to go. Now, when you go to the home use device, which is the Flex, that is, as far as I'm aware at least, and at least at the time of recording, in its category, that's the highest power device that you can get at home. It's 40 joules per square centimeter, up to, depends on which wavelengths you're using, obviously. So it's an excellent, excellent device. I've always recommended it. Now, typical retail cost is going to be in the UK, probably £1,800–1,900. In the US, that's probably going to be $2,000 or just over $2,000, something along those lines. Probably the same in euros as well. Now, is it good? Yes. However, there are downsides. It's not cheap, right? That's £2,000, $2,000, euros, whatever. If you're wanting sort of a home use, like that's still a heck of a lot of money for a lot of people. And I fully appreciate that. I don't expect people to go out and buy these things. If you can afford it, great. The other downside is it takes dedicated time to use. What I mean by that is you can't really be doing anything else while you're using that. So you have to lie down and the module has to go over your face like this. Now you can't really be doing anything because you're lying down. You also got to kind of keep your eyes closed so you can't be typing your email or sending a text message. And so it takes time out of your day to dedicate specifically to that. If you're happy to do that, no problem. go for it. But that's the downside. It's the cost and it's the dedicated time that you have to take away from it. But the power level is fantastic. So that's Dermalux. That's one of the 2 brands that I personally recommend. And like I said, I've been using that one for 6 years in clinic. Never, ever, ever once had a problem with it. As long as you use it correctly, and I know how to use it correctly, never had an issue. There's one other brand that I want to mention, which is also another one that I recommend. Again, no affiliate link, no discount code. I don't work for them. I just think they're good. And this is Style Pro, STYLPRO, all one word. So Style without the E and then Pro. There is actually on my channel a podcast episode quite a few months ago now at time of recording where I actually interviewed the engineer behind the mask. Give that a watch if you're interested in buying it, and you can see much more levels of detail into why I think it's so good. I'm not going to repeat that entire thing here. You'll probably fall asleep and it's there for you. However, why do I like the Style Pro so much, and why is it worth your attention? Well, number one, the price is exceptional. Right now, at the time of recording in the UK, it is retailing for about £80. That's going to be roughly, what, $100? That's nothing. $100, €100, absolutely nothing, which is exceptional. Now, for its category, i.e. LED masks, based on the testing that I have seen, and at least at the time of this recording, I believe it is the highest powered LED mask in the world, okay, compared to any other mask. And I mean, any other mask. In the future, after this video comes out, after I've recorded it, I'm sure more people will manufacture more powerful masks. But at the time, at least, that's the one I recommend. I'm sure I'll update this video in every year or something along those lines. So it's very, very cheap and very, very powerful. And there's another upside. Because it's a mask and there are eye holes, you can put this on your face and you don't have to use dedicated time out of your day to use it. You can still do your cooking, you can send your emails, you can be on the phone, walk around, do whatever you want, because it's got eye holes and you don't have to lie down to use it. And so those reasons are the reasons I recommend those 2 particular brands. Like I said, I don't make anything at all if you go and buy these from wherever, but they are available in most countries. Dermalux is very easily available in the UK, the US, other English-speaking nations, parts of Europe, etc. The Style Pro is easier to get in the UK and parts of Europe. It is available in the US. I know many people in the US say, oh, I can't get hold of it. Yes, you can. I have patients in the US who have this mask. All you have to do is be a little bit more patient and look for a retailer that is willing to ship to the US. It does happen. Like I said, I have patients that send them there. So another reason that I think these LED devices are so good is because right now we're talking about LED in the context of acne. Great. But what about after the acne is gone? You should be able to keep your investment to keep improving skin, not just get rid of the acne, but actually get better quality, youthful looking skin as well. And these masks can do that. So once you use them, as well as hopefully the diet changes as well to get rid of the acne, you can keep them and just generally use them, just to maintain good quality skin or to improve the elasticity and things like that over time. And so your same investment is going to keep paying back more and more and more and more. And if you think about it, let's say you get the Style Pro mask, £80, let's call it $100. Some people spend that on a skincare that runs out once every month or 2 months, and you have to keep buying it. This mask can last like years. So the return on investment is very, very high. Another reason I think LED is very, very good. Now, the Style Pro, I mentioned actually some positives. I'm going to mention one negative as well. The negative is actually the reason why it's so cheap. You have to have trade-offs if you're going to sell something so cheap. And one of the trade-offs is the fact that the battery has probably about 5 uses, maybe 5 or 6 uses before it needs recharging again. Now you may think, oh, that's really annoying. And it might be, that's fair enough, that's a fair comment to make. But if you put a much larger battery in, the price would be much, much higher. And this is the trade-off that you have. And I think it's a perfectly reasonable and acceptable trade-off to make. So that's the negative, but I still definitely recommend it. Now, if you get LED, some principles for you. Number one, always make sure your skin is clear, clean, and dry before putting the mask on. I have seen patients who think they're above the biological law or physics law of some kind, and they say, oh, I put this, I know you're not supposed to put anything on the skin, but I put this on and I'm sure it'll be fine, and it made my skin worse. No, it's not going to be fine. Because what happens is radiation can hit ingredients in your skincare. Those ingredients, those molecules can fragment and turn into things that cause reactions in the skin. This is what we call phototoxicity. It doesn't matter whether you think this is harmful or not, or harmless. Don't put anything on the skin. Trust me. Get it clean, get it dry, and then put the LED on. Nothing wrong with putting creams on afterwards, but definitely not before. Number 2, specifically for the context of acne, frequency of use matters. Okay. For example, when it comes to infrared and its anti-inflammatory properties, let's say you put it on, you have some reduction in the level of inflammation there. But then it's so long before your next session that the inflammation has had a chance to go back to the original amount that there was, in which case you've done nothing, you just wasted time. Let's say, for instance, you used a blue light and you killed some of the bacteria. Fine, great. But then it's been so long since your next session that the remaining bacteria, the residual bacteria, multiplies, and then it goes back to the same amount. Frequency matters, okay? But the opposite is true as well. Sometimes if you do too much in a short space of time, the amount of heat that you put into the skin can irritate the skin. And so there has to be a balance. Where is that balance? I know you're asking that right now. I can't tell you where your individual balance is. This is based on the level of acne, the lifestyle, the amount of vitamin D the skin gets, the response after the first session. You know, that, for instance, no one knows the answer to until you actually try it, which is why when I work with patients one-on-one in my online group, we have conversations almost every day. You know, I don't give them, okay, here's your protocol. I say, right, tomorrow, try this. Let me know how it was. Send me some pictures. And then I'll have a look. I say, right, next day, try this. Next day, try this. And then we go like that. So to say, how do I do it? Again, just want to stress, I can't give people individual advice without knowing nothing, without knowing anything. And also the advice changes sometimes on a day-to-day basis based on the response. So those two things are key. You've got to look at the frequency of use, and you've got to make sure there's nothing on your skin. I'm sure there are a lot more things I can say, but this is not a video just about LED. There's a lot of other things I want to get to as well. But hopefully that's enough about LED, and then you can watch that podcast to learn a bit more too. The next thing that I want to do is show you some before and afters. So all those things put together, if they're done correctly and appropriately, you will get cases like this. These two cases that you can see on screen here, they were done using the Dermalux device. I'm not saying you can't get a good result with other devices. That's absolutely fine, but there's a reason I use Dermalux, okay? And so this should give you some hope. The problem here is, if you get a result like this, you may make the mistake of just walking out the clinic, writing them a golden review, going home and thinking, yes, I've cleared my acne. And then 6 months later, it comes back. You can't keep living your life like that, like an emotional roller coaster. Like, I hated it. Like every day I used to wake up and look in the mirror and think, okay, which one's gone down, which one's new? You can't go on like that. And the problem with LED is, with a lot of things, not just LED actually, I'm being harsh, but with a lot of things is, they're not root cause, hence why you've got to go back to diet. But also another problem is, if you are someone who says, yes, okay, fine, I'll work with the diet, I'll make these changes, I'll do all this, and use LED at the same time, the positive is, well, if you attack the diet, the root cause, and you get rid of the symptoms at the same time, great, you're probably going to get your result much quicker. But the problem with that is, if you have the LED getting rid of the symptoms, and your diet hasn't fully transitioned yet, you may think you have transitioned because it's gone, but you haven't. It's just the LED. So if you do two things at the same time, it's very difficult to draw cause and effect. This is the issue. Now, I'm not saying you can't, you can, but again, this is something which is very individual, and you probably want supervision when you do something like this. Go and see someone. I have a one-to-one group where I work with people, something like that. So if you do multiple things at the same time, diagnosis becomes very, very tricky, not just in terms of saying what's wrong, but in terms of saying what's working. And if we try 3 different things at the same time, how do we know what the result is? So these results, my advice to you on looking at before and afters like this is not to say they're fake or they're rubbish. They're good results. I can see them here on the screen. And they're real. I've seen plenty like that, even with my own eyes. But you're not treating the root cause. And what you don't see in the before and after is, what does it look like 6 months later? Is it back again? Okay, so take a pinch of salt when you look at these before and afters. Don't be drawn into them. Don't be wowed to the point where you say, take my cash. You've got to look at them and say, okay, that treated the symptoms, but did it actually treat the root cause? Think of it in that way. The next thing I want to talk about is something which you may or may not have heard of. If you haven't heard of it, I'm sure you may in the next year or two. This is something called Aviclear, Aviclear. And in fact, what I'll do is let's go to the before and afters. You can see two on screen here. Now, mixed feelings about this, right? So this is a laser. And as you can see on these things, these results here, it's not that great, you know? I mean, that second one with the Caucasian woman, like it's still there. Like, would you say it's better or just sort of the same amount but spread over a bigger area? I think it's the same amount of acne, just spread over a bigger area. And the Afro-Caribbean woman, it's much better, of course, but it's still there. Now, you may think, well, so what? It's a big improvement. This device is sold on the basis that it gets rid of acne, you know? In the marketing, if I'm not quoting exactly, but was to the effect of a certain number of patients, I think it was more than certain number of patients experienced more than 50% reduction or something along those lines. But it's sold as actually getting rid of acne completely. And it's not doing that. Okay. Now you may think, well, how is a laser even supposed to be treating acne? I thought laser was supposed to burn your skin off. There are many different types of lasers nowadays. The technology is incredibly advanced. There are lasers that actually replace this plastic surgeon's scalpel of sorts. If you want to see my full face tightening guide, it's about 2.5 hours. I talk about one of the lasers in there that does that. But we have a laser now, the Aviclear laser. And I think there is one other that's a competitor. I forgot the name of that. What it does is it targets the sebaceous glands in the skin. You know, one of the factors in acne's pathophysiology is the overproduction of oil in these sebaceous glands. So if we hit those things and we limit that potential, then we could potentially not treat the acne, because acne is not caused by lack of laser treatment, so it's not technically a treatment, but we are physically damaging one of the producer of the symptoms. That's what we're trying to do. And you know, the theory is nice, the logic is nice, but in reality, in practice, in clinical practice, as you can see, I don't think it's good enough, frankly. You are looking at multiple sessions, say 3 sessions, maybe something like that, say 2 to 4. Each one's about 30 minutes. Each session is probably going to cost you, or I don't know if it's each session or the total treatment, I'm not sure, depends on who you see. But I would expect somewhere between, say, £500 and £3,000, depending on where you go. Now, let's say you spend £3,000 and you're, hopefully the case is still on screen here. Let's say you spent £3,000 and you are that Caucasian woman with the acne that's still there. Like, are you kidding me? If you spent less than 10% of that, far less than 10% of that, in fact, on an LED mask, and that got rid of your symptoms much easier without having to go somewhere, you'd feel pretty horrible because of what you've missed out on. And so the reason I don't think this is worth it, personally, and I want to advise against it, in my opinion, is that I don't like the fact that you have results like that. I don't think that's good enough. And I don't like the fact that it is as expensive as it is. It's made by a company, I believe, called Cutera, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. And I just do not advise my patients to get that whatsoever. The return on investment is incredibly poor. The return on investment, something like an LED mask, exceptionally high. So not too much to say about this, except I don't think it's good enough, not worth the money, too expensive. I don't think it even works that well, personally. And that's just my honest opinion. The next thing I want to go through is this Hydrafacial. Now, if you don't know what it is, there's a video that should be on screen now, showing you roughly what it is. But frankly, what it is an expensive shower, in my opinion. So essentially, you have like a pen-like device, and it goes over the skin. It's got a large opening. The opening is flush against the skin. It goes over like this, and you're just sucking rubbish out the skin, and then you're forcing things into the skin. And then there's a load of water splashing everywhere. And then it collects in a bottle, and the bottle has a slight color, or the liquid in the bottle has a slight color. And you think, oh, wow, look at all the dirt it's gotten rid of. But if, frankly, some soap in the shower will do the same thing when the water falls on the ground. Now, Hydrafacial, why have I put this in there? Because when you have that treatment done, you'll walk out of there with a bit of inflammation, I think. And certainly from what I've seen with my own eyes, even at conferences where there's demos of people go and have Hydrafacial done and you can watch it being done, I can see redness in the face. I think that's inflammation, right? And go and try it if you don't believe me. And when that inflammation comes, that blood rushes to the face. I'm sure you can guess why, because what you're doing to the skin, that red under the skin increases the saturation of the color. So you walk out thinking, oh, I've got a glow. No, inflammation is what you should call it, not a glow. You know, when people are in sport and they get hit in the face, like a footballer gets whacked in the face and they're red, do we say, oh, they've got a nice glow? Or do we say, no, they're inflamed? We say they're inflamed. Call it what it is. Personally, I'm fed up of manufacturers trying to rephrase inflammation as a glow to make it sound good. Whereas in reality, it is just inflammation. So you get that as part of it. And if you walk out and you run your finger over your skin, you'll probably see that it feels really smooth. And you think, oh, that's amazing. It feels really nice. Yeah, it may feel nice, but if you get a sanding machine and you rub that on your face, it's going to feel smooth after that as well. But have you actually helped yourself? No, you haven't. So Hydrafacial, I think, is one of the biggest piles of SHIT in this entire industry. I would never, ever have one myself. I would never recommend it to other people. If you want one, go and have a shower, maybe use a bit of an acid cleanser. You've basically got the same thing as far as I'm concerned. So it is just a load of marketing. Now, when you do that, when you suck all this stuff out, you may be sucking out some of the stuff that's not good for your skin. Great. But you're probably sucking everything out. And things are meant to be on the skin for a reason. Now, if you then shove a load of things in, you say, oh, we can force it through the skin because the force, whatever, fine. But then that's trauma, that's getting the things into the skin through trauma. Like, how do you then stop other things also going into the same door that you just created? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I remember many years ago, I sent them an email asking, you know, some questions, and I just never got a reply once I started poking holes in things. And it doesn't surprise me. And actually, if you're in the industry watching this, if you work in cosmetic medicine here, you will notice the price of these machines has gone up and up and up and up over the years, as the marketing has gone up and up and up. Is it actually offering anything more to the patients? You tell me. And I think it's just marketing. So personally, I think stay away. There is nothing in there that is actually treating acne. Acne is not caused by lack of Hydrafacial treatments. So having Hydrafacial treatment isn't going to treat the root cause. There's so much I can say, but it's just not worth the money. So frankly, stay away. And by the way, here's another thing. If you look at the fact that it's stripping a load of stuff off the skin, from a skin, and assuming you've got acne here, from a skin that's struggling, like, it needs protection. One of the reasons it's inflamed, it needs protection. And so if you then strip even more off, it might feel smooth when you run your finger over it, but you've just gotten rid of protective layers as well. So no wonder your skin is red. Red is a danger sign. It doesn't mean, oh, keep going and doing it. Stay away. I'm going to move on before I go on too much about Hydrafacial. The next thing I want to talk about is exfoliation, or sometimes people call it dermabrasion as well. There's different kind of things. So there's a video that should be playing on screen now, kind of explaining what it is. Essentially, what we're trying to do is just take stuff off the skin in a similar way to that first stage of Hydrafacial, where you're just sucking things off. Now, again, when you have these things, what happens is patients will have the treatment, they'll run their hands over their skin and go, oh, look at that feels so smooth. I don't care how nice the outside feels. I care about the quality of the cell function inside. They're two completely different things. One doesn't correlate to the other. You can have a sanding machine to smooth your skin. Doesn't mean the cell function inside the skin is actually any better, and it's now going to stop taking part in this pathophysiological process that leads to things like pimples. They're completely different things and may not even be connected. And so when you look at dermabrasion and exfoliation, you're just taking things off. You're not actually doing anything biological to improve the quality of the cell function. As well as that, if you look at the thickness of skin in your mind, and you realize that the skin has to have some thickness in order to have protection of the structures underneath, common sense, obviously, but what happens if you thin that? You take stuff off. There's less protection now for things that are underneath. So if something underneath is being irritated and it's going to inflame, you've now made it even easier to irritate those tissues by stripping things off the skin. And so be very, very careful with treatments like this. Obviously, you're not going to be treating it, sticking with the theme of this video, root cause, not symptom cover-up, because acne is not caused by lack of dermabrasion. So personally, I think stay away entirely. It's not worth it whatsoever. You're not helping yourself. You're stripping things away from the skin in a very, very physical way that is not needed whatsoever. What else? What have we got next? So the next thing is microneedling, and I'm sure many of you heard of it, but there should be a video of it playing on screen right now. So microneedling, this divides people when it comes to acne, and there's a lot to say. I've done a lot of videos on microneedling in this channel. You can go and look, have a little search, and find the stuff I've said about it in the past. Now, microneedling, some people will say it helps acne, and some people will say it doesn't help acne, it makes it worse. Why is it that we have such opposing views? Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit of both perspectives, and you can decide for yourselves what you think, and I'll give you my take on it as well. Some people will say it's positive. You know, typically this will be people who make money from microneedling. Surprise, surprise. Now, that doesn't mean it's wrong what they say, but you've got to take that into account. Now, some of the bacteria associated with acne are going to be anaerobic, so they thrive in oxygen-poor environments. And so the theory is, or one of the theories when it comes to microneedling and acne is, well, if you have these needles going in and out of the skin and you rub that over the skin, what happens is these bacteria, which are buried in biofilms, when you do that, you shift them around and you expose them to oxygen as a result. So as a result of that, the bacteria then can't survive, and so they die. The theory of that isn't absurd. I get that, and it does make some sense. And indeed, you will find some people who advocate for microneedling as an acne treatment, they will have before and after showing it's reduced. Fine. But again, what did I say before? Don't be wowed by before and afters. What about 6 months after that? Did it stay like that, or did it come back? Do you think acne is caused by lack of microneedling? Do you think obesity is caused by lack of Ozempic? Or is it caused by what you put in your mouth? So how is giving Ozempic treating the problem? It's covering it up. Right, acne is not caused by lack of microneedling. So giving microneedling is not treating the root cause. And so even if you see before and afters with microneedling, you know, number one, that's probably how they managed to do something, if that's the case. And number two, what about down the line with no root cause treatment? And the people that are against microneedling for acne, there's many reasons. One of the reasons is the fact that, you know, all these needles going in and out of the skin is very inflammatory. And you've got an inflammatory condition. So increasing inflammation during a time of already high inflammation, that's not going to bode well, is it? And I agree with them on that. Another problem is, well, you know, if you've got these bacteria which are highly implicated and associated with acne, as you have this device running all over the face, are you not just spreading that bacteria all the way around the face? And again, I agree. Like, I think that's probably what you are doing. So it's very difficult for me to say microneedling treats acne. I would say it's impossible for anyone to prove that microneedling treats acne, i.e. reverses the root cause. But those are the opposing sides when it comes to microneedling and acne, and why I am on the side which says it is not something I would do for acne. But like I said, people that make money from using microneedling, they are going to say it is good for it. So personally, I don't recommend it whatsoever for the reasons I've outlined. If you get rid of your acne and you maybe have some scars left over, which will be another big video, I'm sure, then it may be worthwhile looking at microneedling to break up some of that scar tissue, depending on the person and the person doing the needling and type of scars, etc., etc. That's another big lecture by itself. But certain types of microneedling may play a role in that respect. But while there's acne, I'm not convinced personally. So my advice is do not use microneedling to try and treat acne at all. So the next section, quite generic sounding, as you can see by the title on screen, other devices. All I want to say here is I can't go through every single device that exists in the entire world in one video, obviously. But what I can do is talk about the perspective that you should have when you see a device that I haven't mentioned here, because I'm sure you will. You'll see something and say, oh, I wonder what he thinks of this. Let me tell you something. No device is going to treat the root cause of acne, because the root cause is not lack of device, lack of clinical treatment by a device. So you will never be treating the root cause, ever. No, never, ever, 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 ever. And so if you're not going to be treating the root cause, there's always that risk of it coming back. There's always that risk of it getting worse or just not getting better, or 6 months down the line, you get a headache because you wake up with more of the spot and then it gets worse and worse and worse. So no device is ever going to treat acne. Always understand that. A device can simply help cover up symptoms. And that's all you need to know when it comes to any device and the use of it for acne. It may cover up the symptoms much better than something else, but it's still not treating it. Devices, in my view, when it comes to acne, are about combining them with things like the diet at the same time. Now, you may say, well, you said if you do the device and the diet at the same time, you don't know which is improving. Absolutely correct. But if you know what you're doing, there are ways around that. And again, that's based on the individual as well. So devices, if you're going to do anything, go with the cheapest one, the LED mask. That is going to be an exceptionally good return on investment. Like I said, I don't make any money by recommending that whatsoever. I don't sell it. You can't buy it from me. You're going to have to buy it yourself somewhere. But in terms of return on investment, very, very little in the whole world of cosmetic treatments beats an LED mask. So that is my recommendation when it comes to devices. If you're happy to spend or you want to spend a bit more, go to a clinic, get some kind of light therapy device, LED therapy device that's going to treat the symptoms of acne, and everything else, there's no real point. In the future, things may come in and I may update this video, but at the time of recording, those are my opinions. So the next section is all about, as you can see on screen now, injectables. Now, again, the same perspective applies. Acne is not caused by lack of injectable treatment. And so any injectables that you use, at best, they're going to provide temporary relief of certain symptoms. That is all. There's nothing inherently wrong with using injectables during a time period where the patient has acne, but you are not treating acne using injectables or whatever injectable you want to have a look at. So always remember that. And in fact, depending on the injectable, you know, if you have something where there's a lot of entry points into the skin with a lot of needle entries, is that going to create a certain amount of inflammation, which adds to the inflammation that's already there because you've got acne, and potentially make things worse? You never know. If you have something that is going into the skin here, and then here, and then here, and then here, are you transferring bacteria as well? Again, you never know. And so for me, injectables, acne is not a reason to not do injectables. You can do them safely, but you're not treating anything. And most of the time, I don't think they're that good at masking symptoms either. Exceptions exist, but most of the time, I don't think they're that great. So first one, as you can see on screen, is the dermal filler. Now, what you will also see on screen now is some of my cases where I have done dermal filler for patients. When you see a dermal filler, when you think of dermal filler, what you're seeing on screen now is the typical use for dermal filler. And why is it appropriate for the uses that are coming up on screen now? Well, dermal filler is a volumizing agent. And in the cases that you are seeing here, the diagnosis was lack of volume. So if there's not enough volume, putting volume in there to make it enough, perfectly reasonable and logical in that perspective. And so filler is appropriate in those sort of instances. I don't think it's appropriate to treat acne. I don't think it's appropriate to use as something to reverse symptoms of acne either. Why have I put this in here then? Well, I am aware from somewhere people are getting the information, false information, I think, that dermal filler is good for helping acne. Why do I think that? Because people have emailed me, people have commented on videos, people have messaged, especially in my school group online as well, which I'll link in the description below if you want to have a look. They said, what about dermal filler for acne? I've heard this, I've heard that. You know, these dermal fillers, they're basically, each brand is slightly different. In essence, it's cross-linked hyaluronic acid. And you may think, oh, hyaluronic acid is great or whatever, but it's not treating anything. Like, acne is not caused by lack of hyaluronic acid injections. There's so many factors that go into it. Like, even if you put the hyaluronic acid in there, if you're still having a massive intake of lectins in your diet, and these things go into your body and cause havoc still, like, so what? Like, in fact, I was consulting for a patient very recently, a 16-year-old girl, and the mum was on the call. You may be watching this, in fact. That call was only a few days prior to this recording. And they tried so many different things. They tried the LED therapy, they tried certain skincare, all sorts of things. Nothing touched it. And here's me sat saying, you know, LED is really good. It is really good. But because they didn't look at the root cause, none of it worked. And so many of you, when you try things, and you try skincare, you try this device, you try that, and you go, oh, it doesn't work, or that doesn't work, or that doesn't work. It can work. It just means that you probably haven't found the root cause yet. That's all. And so dermal filler does not hit the root cause. It's not really going to help the symptoms in terms of pimples or anything like that as well. It will change your face shape if that gives you a psychological benefit, but it's not going to get rid of the acne. So please don't fall for, I don't know where this has come from. I don't know where people think, why people think dermal filler can be used in acne cases, but I don't believe that it's treating anything, frankly. Next one, Botox. So just to be pedantic for a second, the word Botox is actually a brand, and botulinum toxin is the ingredient. So I'm going to use the word toxin here, but I'm specifically referring to what you may know as Botox, just to be clear. So you may think this is something that you do to stop you moving, and you can, absolutely fine. People do that all the time. But it is actually something that you may wish to consider for the symptoms of acne. Why? Well, what happens in acne, one of the things that happens, I should say, is, like I mentioned previously, we talked about devices and the Aviclear laser, these sebaceous glands will overproduce oil. And as you think, well, what the hell has toxin got to do with that? Well, I made a video on this channel, I'm sure you'll find it, something about exposing Botox, can't remember the title. But I said, look, Botox is not this thing that just stops you moving. It will actually completely destroy your cells' ability to make the things they need to make, such as sebum. And as a result of that, it will actually drop the amount of elasticity in the skin. Some of you may be thinking, oh, but look at the people with Botox, the skin's smooth. Yeah, it might be smooth, but it doesn't change it doesn't say anything about the rate at which that skin is now aging. It doesn't say anything about the elasticity measurements. And the drop in the sebum and the elasticity measurements in the video I made, which is on this channel still, I showed actual scientific papers, actual quantitative measurements for that. It was done in the University of Tokyo in 2015 and 2016, those two studies. Very, very good studies. Very good, very quantitative. And when you look at those things, sometimes you take advantage of those negative things. Not the elasticity, no one wants the loss of that, but the complete eradication or destruction or reduction in the production of sebum. If you microdose toxin all over the face, and you do a tiny amount in lots and lots of injection points, what you will do is actually you will affect those sebaceous glands, and people get good relief, and they produce a lot less. And what you find actually is it gives an anti-sweating effect as well. You know, people use toxin in the underarms, and that stops them sweating. It works very, very well. And when you see that, yes, that might look like a positive thing, but you should also look at that and realize, actually, now I get this is actually really kind of toxic if it stops all these things from happening. So once you see all those things, you start to realize, actually, I get why they call it a toxin now. It's actually pretty toxic. It stops the sweat from here. It stops the muscle moving. It stops sebum being produced. This is a really potent molecule. And yeah, those are negative things. I always talk about those negative things. But if you control that in a microdose, you can limit that damage. And in acne, honestly, it pains me to say it, but I think it's not that bad. Okay, when you use it for this particular purpose, it can help. But here's the thing, it doesn't last forever, right? And depending on the manufacturing process and which toxin brand you use, because there are a lot now, what happens is you could actually start to develop antibodies to these things, and you can actually measure them. There is a lab in Germany, I think, called, is it called Toxygen? I'm not sure. They can actually, you can send a blood sample, cold chain, and they will actually show you the antibodies to the toxin that you have. So you've got to pick the right brand. Personally, my recommendation at the time of recording is a brand called Nuceiva, Nuceiva. That's the UK name. Other parts of the world call it Nabota, Nabota. In the US, I think it's called Jeuveau, Juveau. I think it's brilliant. There are studies that I have seen where it shows, I think it was 2,000 blood tests, no antibodies were found whatsoever. So if you want to keep working, that's the one to use, in my opinion, at the time of recording this. However, it still doesn't last forever. Like it's still not treating it. It's just going after the symptoms, which for some people is acceptable because they just want a relief of the symptoms while they work on getting the root cause, which is fine. I'm not one to judge. But remember, it's not treating things. Even if you use it and it gets rid of certain things, it could come back. You know, you can't keep going and having Botox constantly every couple of months for your entire life. It's going to get boring after a while. So Botox can work, has to be done in that particular way. The next category is skin boosters. So skin boosters, it doesn't really say anything about what's actually in these syringes. There's a very, very large difference. A lot of them work simply by inflammation. You look at ingredients such as polyallactic acid, it's just inflammatory, right? Hence why you only make type 1 and type 2 collagen, which is scar tissue. Surprise, surprise. Now, skin boosters, you may think, well, it sounds great. It's going to help the skin. Why not use it in acne? The issue is, like I said, most of them, well, not most, quite a lot work by inflammation. So it's not going to be treating anything. As well as that, these skin boosters are not designed to be working in an inflamed environment, in an acne environment. So the data on them is not for people like you. The data is for standard skin in terms of the results that you see. There's no guarantee you'll see anything if it's in a highly inflamed environment. So be very careful with that. As well as, again, it's not treating anything. The injectable that I think is the best in the world is called Sunekos, Sunekos. Even that, I'm not going to say it's an acne treatment. Like I wouldn't say go and get it if you've got acne either. Like that's for regular skin that wants improving in some way. And so I don't think there's any anti-acne injectable out there, at least right now when I say this. Who knows in the future what might come up. And so skin boosters, even if you pay a few $100s per session, is it actually going to help the acne at all? Certainly not going to get rid of the root cause, because acne is not caused by lack of skin boosting injections. And I don't think there's any out there that have any meaningful or significant impact on the symptoms either. There may be some which reduce inflammation in some way, where they have higher molecular weight hyaluronic acid, higher weight being, let's say, well over 1,000 kilodaltons. But even if that's there and it has an anti-inflammatory effect and it gives you some temporary relief, well, that HA is then going to be broken down by hyaluronidase, which is an enzyme in the skin. And when it gets broken down, what are you going to do then? Go back to the clinic every week to keep getting injected? So, in my view, don't look at skin boosters as anything that you should be spending your money on when it comes to acne specifically. They can be great. They can offer great results. But for acne, I don't think it's worth the return on investment at all, frankly. So the next section, a big one, skincare. I'm sure many of you that clicked on this will probably think, yeah, right, let's click on this and see which skincare he recommends. Well, many times, if you're in my one-to-one supervision group where we actually get to the root cause of people's problems, you'll notice a lot of times we don't even use skincare, and yet the acne disappears. Tell me that's not root cause. And think about the same perspective. If you have acne, it's not there because you didn't use skincare. It's there for some other reason. So whatever skincare you buy, as long as you know you're buying that and you're not going to be treating the root cause, that's fine. Go right ahead. Skincare should be seen as, in this context for acne, as a localized nutrition, if you like. And that's it. Localized micronutrients. There's not a lot more to it than that. But remember what I said about diet, and you should never skip that again. I'll say that again. Lectins I think are very, very key when it comes to acne. And if we learn new things in the future, I'll redo this video, I'll make a more updated version. But right now, lectins are very, very key when it comes to these sorts of things. You can have the best skincare in the world going on the outside, but the lectins are still pumping in on the inside, you're still going to have the acne. And going back to that consultation I had with a mother and daughter a few days ago, this mother was a prescriber. She was a nurse, I believe. And so she had access to whatever her daughter needed to be prescribed, and the acne was still there. So skincare is not the first port of call, in my view. It should be the nutrition. And then, skincare, depending on where you go, it might cost a few $100s or a few £100s or euros. If you spend a fraction of that on the LED mask, honestly, I think you're going to get more from an LED mask than you do skincare. It's also not going to run out every month or every couple of months, and it will last years. So skincare, don't place a lot of emphasis on it. The reason I believe there is a lot of emphasis on it is simply just the amount of marketing, because companies love the idea that they can have a large markup on this thing, and they know you'll keep buying it again and again and again. And in fact, when you look at that, when you understand that about the skincare industry, it's almost in their benefit to not help the acne or to not reverse the acne, because then you keep on buying it. I know I sound cynical, but tell me that doesn't make sense, at least. So when it comes to skincare, have that perspective. Certain things can help. I'm going to run through a couple of different skincare types here. Now, at the time of recording this, at least, I don't have any skincare to sell you. I don't have any anti-acne products whatsoever. So I'm not going to mention a load of brands that I stick to here. I might mention a couple of examples, but really I'm going to talk about ingredients here, and you apply that into whatever context that you like. So the first section is cleansers. Yes. So cleansers, I've split it here in my notes into basically two different types. So we've got acid and oil. Think about what a cleanser is trying to do. I don't mean make the skin clean. That's too obvious. What I mean is try and distill from the product you are using what it is going to do to the skin thickness. So if you have a skin thickness as this much, and I have a very harsh cleanser, something very acidic over the top, taking out a lot, potentially on a microscopic level at least, it's going to go down somewhat. So it's thinned, which means everything inside can be irritated easier from everything outside. So it could inflame easier. And the acid, you know, your skin is going to be sensitive sometimes. Chucking a load of acid on there is clearly not going to help. So acid cleansers, I'm not a massive fan of in acne. I can understand why some people talk about them. Why? Well, when we look at AHAs and BHAs, alpha hydroxy acids and beta hydroxy acids, I won't talk about chiral carbons and what makes something alpha or beta in chemistry, but you can look that up if you want. But think about it roughly and in pure layman's terms this way. The BHAs, the beta hydroxy acids, they are a little bit more fat soluble, lipophilic or hydrophobic, if you like. And things like salicylic acid. And so when you've got these blocked pores, the theory is, well, because it's fat soluble, it can actually go inside these pores and clear them out. I don't disagree with that. And I don't think there's anything inherently illogical about that either. That's fine. I've got no problem with it. But also when your skin is tender, like sometimes an acid will just make it more tender. And you've got to put some common sense into it. So there's nothing wrong with the logic of why people recommend it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with my logic of tender skin shouldn't be made more tender. And so there's a balance to strike, and you've got to base that again on the individual. So when people comment on my video saying, you know, should I use this cleanser? I've got no idea because I don't know what situation or state your skin is in. So there's a positive and a minus when it comes to these cleansers. I'm not going to say to you here, in fact, I can't say to you, have it or don't have it, because it depends on the skin. But those are the perspectives. You know, if you want an experiment where you try it and see what happens, go for it. You know, there are very, very cheap ones available in the market, and I will mention brands here. The other type of cleanser that I've got in my notes here is the oil-based. The reason I mention oil-based cleansers is because they're not going to be as harsh in stripping things off your skin. And that is very, very crucial in inflammatory conditions. You don't want to make the skin more inflamed by making it thinner and thinner. So ingredients-wise, yeah, if you're going to go for an acid, look for BHAs like salicylic acid. That's a very common one. If you're going to go for an oil-based, go for as gentle an oil as you can. I know The Ordinary do a squalane cleanser, squalane-based cleanser. Squalane oil is very nice to the skin. That's very cheap. If I'm not mistaken, that's probably like less than £10, less than $10. I might be slightly wrong. Maybe it's changed by the time you see this video, but it's still not going to break the bank. When it comes to the acid-based, you could look at something like, let's say, a Cetaphil or a CeraVe cleanser. I know one of those two has something called an SA cleanser, a salicylic acid cleanser. Again, I think that's very cheap, probably $10, maybe less, £10, €10. You don't need to be spending a heck of a lot of money on cleansers, honestly. The cheap ones will work just as well. Now, for me, my first preference is actually, get this, plain water. Why? Well, that was good enough for 6 million years. And when we have things like sweat in our face and our skin, sweat's water soluble. It can wash off with just water. You don't need massive amounts of ingredients to wash that off. So I always say, start with the least invasive thing. So typically I say to people, use water if possible. Now, sometimes we don't start on that. For example, if someone is putting on quite a lot of makeup and water clearly isn't going to cut the mustard, then we'll say, okay, skip that stage. Let's get something a little bit harsher. Now, what do you then decide in that kind of situation? If you've got acne, but you want to use makeup as well. I'm not going to say don't use makeup. I think that's useless advice. There is an element of enjoyment to life as well. So I wouldn't expect people to just suddenly stop using makeup if they enjoy it. But what you have to do is use the most gentle yet still effective thing that you can. So if you can use an oil-based cleanser, which doesn't leave your skin feeling dry and tight afterwards, that's probably the best one. If you use something that, yes, takes the makeup off, but then it takes off a load more besides the makeup, underneath the makeup and the stuff that's meant to be there as well, it's going to feel really dry. it's going to feel very tight, and you've kind of completely wiped off the face of the skin, things that are meant to be there as well. And if you keep on doing that, it's not going to help. Okay, I've had patients in my lifetime, in my career, where they come to me and say, oh, you know, I cleanse 3 times a day, 4 times a day, and it's still there. And I think, why don't you consider the fact that maybe that's one of the reasons it's still there? You see, you make that oil on the skin. If you strip away all the oil and things are very dry, that can act as a feedback mechanism for the skin to say, there's not enough oil here. Let's make some oil. So then they produce more. So in some instances, I've seen this with my own eyes. They cleanse more, and then the oil glands produce more oil to compensate. Listen to what's happening, right? This is why skincare is not the root cause. Instead of stripping it and then getting it to make more, treat the root cause. Think about your diet yet again. I know I sound like a broken record, but I genuinely believe the diet is incredibly important in all medical conditions, not just when it comes to acne as well. So cleansers, don't over cleanse. Use the most gentle thing you can. If water will do, just use water. Don't spend more than, in British pounds, don't spend more than, say, £20 max. You don't need to cleanse every single day. Like, if you've been at home all day doing nothing, you haven't sweated at all, you don't need to just suddenly go and put a cleanser on and wash everything off and strip stuff off your skin. It's situational, if possible. So have that in your mind when it comes to cleansers. Like I said, water, Cetaphil, CeraVe, The Ordinary, I think they're absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with those whatsoever. The next one is retinoids. So if you don't know what a retinoid is a derivative or a type of vitamin A. So for example, you have the word acids, and there are lots of different types of acids. You have retinoids, lots of different types of vitamin A. The one that you've probably heard of, and the words are similar for obvious reasons, is retinol. So retinol is a form of vitamin A. It's like the transport form, right? Retinol, OL, means it's an alcohol. There's a hydroxyl group. I shouldn't get too much into the chemistry, but it's water soluble. So with something like SRBP, serum retinol binding protein, it can be transported in the blood. Now, retinol is very well known, very widely available. You have in the spectrum below that, not in terms of necessarily long-term efficacy, but in terms of the redox spectrum, if you like, you have something called retinyl esters, such as retinol palmitate. That's a storage form of vitamin A, and that can be converted into retinol. Retinol can be used, it can be turned into retinaldehyde or retinal, which is an aldehyde molecule, and then that can be then turned into something called a carboxylic acid. The vitamin A version of or carboxylic acid version of vitamin A is retinoic acid, and that acts directly in the receptors within the cell called RARs, retinoic acid receptors, gamma. So you've got this spectrum. Why is it that everyone knows retinol? Why is it that whenever you go into a shop, you always see retinol? Well, certain parts of that spectrum you can legally buy yourself, and certain parts you can't. Now, there is some variation amongst different countries, different laws. I get that. I'm talking in general here. Once you get to retinol palmitate, retinol, retinaldehyde, you can basically buy that yourself. Once you get to retinoic acid and beyond, because there are things beyond as well, and I'll mention those today, they're prescription only because of their strength. So retinol is a nice balance between, cost of manufacturing, the ability to sell to the public so they can actually make a sale, etc., etc. And so that's what you hear in the shops very, very much. Doesn't mean it's the best, doesn't mean it's the most biologically active, whatever. So you've got to split retinoids into those two camps. You've got to look at what you can buy yourself and what you can't, i.e. what's commercial and what's prescription only. If you want strength, go prescription, right? Now, why is it that you haven't seen the prescription stuff very much? Depending on the country that you're in, every country is different, you can't advertise the prescription stuff. So the public won't know. And so you can only companies know that. So why would a company advertise something, or why would a company want to sell something they can't advertise? They'll have much less sales. And so they put the marketing into this stuff, which is not as strong, and yet usually it's more expensive because you're paying for the marketing as well. The prescription stuff can be cheaper at times. So when it comes to those sorts of things, whether you have retinol ester like retinol palmitate, an alcohol form such as retinol, or an aldehyde form such as retinal, frankly, in the long term, it's going to look the same. Like there's no evidence to show, there's no scientific evidence to show that after, let's pick a number like 5 years or whatever. If you have, let's say, retinol a low percentage versus a high percentage, or even tretinoin, which is retinoic acid, at a low percentage or a high percentage, after 5 years, frankly, the two people you're doing in this hypothetical study, one uses low, one uses high, they're going to get the same amount of improvement. They're going to look the same if they were twins to start with, in terms of what the skin was like after 5 years. You've got so much vitamin A cumulatively, you can't not have great skin. And so don't worry about the strength. You know, if you have a higher strength, potentially you're going to get more of a reaction in the short term. This is what we call a retinoid reaction or retinol burn, whatever you want to call it. And you get them. Essentially what's happening is your skin is not used to that much vitamin A. So a bit of a chaotic scene in the skin. And so it could go more red, it could go more tender, it could get the acne worse, whatever you want to call it. It could be very difficult to even touch the skin. Doesn't mean it's made it worse. It means you're going through a reaction. And typically everyone goes through it. Once it's done, you never have to go through it again. So should you use a retinoid? Well, first of all, those reactions are something you've got to accept if you're going to use it. You've also got to accept the fact that you're not treating the root cause, okay? Acne is not caused by lack of skincare at all, including retinoids. And you've got to weigh up the cost as well. Now, even if you use a good quality retinol or retinaldehyde or retinol ester, like I said, it's not going to treat it, and it's going to take time to actually see the result. If you do use those skincares and you're still eating a load of lectins, the cause is still there. So you're wasting your time anyway. Now, if you're going to have it, my recommendation is just go for the more powerful ones. Okay, you can't get them yourself, fine. But if you pay for a consultation with someone who knows what they're doing and has worked, you know, in this field for a while, treated a lot of acne people, you may pay several £100s or several $100s for the consultation. Honestly, that's worth it. You're paying for like a decade of experience. Think of it that way, for a couple £100 or euros or dollars, whatever. That's worth it. Do that and then get prescribed to you something like tretinoin or another step up, which is different active ingredient, adapalene. Or you can go all the way up to something like trifarotene, Acleaf, aka LIEF. These are man-made versions. And you're going to get far more retinoid activity in the skin. Doesn't mean it's necessarily better, but for some people, it may turn out to be a better option because different retinoids will give different amounts of retinoid reactions when you put them on. So if you really want strength, go and see someone, have a paid consultation, ask your questions, get them to prescribe something that you can't buy commercially and just use that. If you don't want to do that, stick with the commercial side. Personally, my recommendation, forget the retinol. You can even forget the retinaldehyde. Just go for the retinol ester, like retinol palmitate. Environ, ENVIRON, is a company which offers a product called, I think, AVST1, which has retinol palmitate, and it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with higher amounts of vitamin A in there. And if you get that, you're going to get a low amount of strength in the vitamin A, but if you use it long term, frankly, I think you're going to get the same result. It's not expensive. I can't remember off the top of my head now, but I think it's roughly 30 to 40 pounds, same, probably around the same in euros and dollars. And that's going to give you that low grade chronic vitamin A if you want anything. So don't spend your money on something that's ridiculously expensive. If you do want a retinol, have a look at the Inky List and the Ordinary. They are incredibly cheap. And frankly, you're not getting anything less compared to the brands which charge like £60 or £100 for retinol. It's the same thing. So just get the cheapest one you can, the one with the least cost and the least size, or the smallest sized ingredient list. So you've got the least amount of crap in there as well. But again, remember this, you're not treating anything, right? Vitamin A seems to work for acne symptoms. Doesn't mean it won't come back. So be very careful with the faith that you place in it, and do not think you have to get the most powerful one. You can get the lower power, or lower strength, accept there's less a reaction as the positive, but it takes longer as the negative. Nothing wrong with that at all. So I hope that gives you a nice rough overview of retinoids when it comes to acne. If you do use it, don't feel as though you have to stay on it. I have used them many times in clinic. Still occasionally you use them in clinic for patients that want to, but then I say, look, you don't need to stay on it forever afterwards. And what we actually move to is what I'm going to move to now, which is, as you can see on screen, B3 or vitamin B3. Now, you may know this as an ingredient such as niacinamide. Niacinamide is a phenomenal ingredient. Okay, why have I specifically talked about this? It has many benefits, such as being anti-inflammatory, which is one of the key ones that we want when it comes to acne. Niacinamide is something you know what, B3 is an umbrella term. It's like retinoids. There's different types of vitamin A under that umbrella term. B3 is an umbrella term. You've got niacinamide, you've got niacin, you've got nicotinamide, you've got NAD+, which is an incredible molecule that I use in clinic all the time. And I have used NAD+ in cases where, you know, people have relief from things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autoimmune disorders, metabolic dysfunction in combination with other therapies. It's extraordinary. You know, it was one of the most anti-aging molecules we have ever discovered. I don't think we'll ever understand it fully, but NAD+ is extraordinary. And guess what? It's a B3 derivative. And guess what? Another cousin of NAD+, niacinamide, does also incredible things in a local context in skin. It's no coincidence because B3 is highly involved in the metabolism of cells, the ability of the cells to utilize ATP, the energy currency, to do all the work that they need to do. And B3 can be quite anti-inflammatory to that extent as well. So a lot of my patients who were on retinoids long-term, their skin has stopped improving because there's nothing wrong with it anymore. But we switched them to this and they much prefer it. And I actually have patients where if they do want skincare, they are perfectly happy for me to prescribe them a compounded, custom-made niacinamide product, which is very high strength, they can't buy in the shop, instead of a retinoid. And guess what? They don't get that retinol burn, but they still get fantastic relief. And they love it. And they just stay on that afterwards. There's nothing wrong with it at all. So B3, honestly, I think this narrative that pervades the skin industry that says, you know, retinoids are the royalty of skincare. I get it. It came out in the 80s from the same guy that invented microneedling and Environ, actually, Des Fernandez, tremendous man. But I don't think it's the royalty of skincare. When we look at what happens to cells in general, not just in the skin, when we utilize therapies based on B3, miracles happen. Vitamin A, yes, they can improve to some extent. They can help things, but it's nothing compared to giving B3 to cells. And so when we take that principle and apply it to the skin, I think I'm proven right. Give it a try. Speak to your dermatologist, see, or anyone that can prescribe, and say, look, can we try high-strength niacinamide? I do that for my patients, and we have great results. Even in the one-to-one group where we have conversations almost every day, we look at things like custom-made high-strength niacinamide instead of the retinoids. Give it a try. And if you have tried it, please comment down below. I'd love to see your experiences. But B3, I think that's potentially going to replace retinoids for me completely in clinic. And I thoroughly urge you to give it a go. So the final bit about skincare is just other skincare. Here again, I can't go through every single skincare product in the world. Obviously, I've gone through some key ingredients. By the way, for B3, when it comes to high strength, if you want a commercial version, I think, and I might be wrong on this, but I think the Inculist do a high strength niacinamide serum that is, I think 10 or 20%, something along those lines. The only issue with it is there's a few other things in the ingredient list I wish weren't there, but you can't have everything. So there's a good one. Or The Ordinary used to do a niacinamide powder, probably completely gone by the time you see this video. I thought that was incredible because it's pure niacinamide, nothing else in it. And you can make whatever concentration you want because it's a powder for you to mix in. But yeah, getting back to other skincare. So I want to give you a perspective on skincare because, like I said, I haven't talked about every single ingredient, and new ones are always going to be found, new ones are always going to be added. And you're going to sit there and think, oh, what does he think about this? Or what about that? Think about it this way, regardless of what new ingredient you find or what new product you find, the key is acne is not caused by lack of skincare. So whatever it may be, whatever that ingredient may be, whatever the product may be, whatever the brand, you're still not treating acne. You are at best trying to attack some of the symptoms to be not as troublesome for the patient, shall we say, or for yourself. But it doesn't mean it won't come back because you haven't treated the root cause. So whatever your skincare is, I don't think it's worth spending a ridiculous amount unless it's for something very, very specific that's compounded, in which case, fair enough, you can't get it commercially, or it's an ingredient that is just very naturally expensive to work with. You get it. There are certain skincare, like NAD, for instance, is very, very difficult to get high quality NAD and to put it in skincare. The issue with skincare with NAD now, by the time you rub it on your face, it's not NAD anymore. It's probably nicotinamide, it's something else, and ADP ribose. A lot of people don't realize that, so they're wasting their money. But anyway, that's a video for another day. When we come back to other skincare, just understand that because you're never treating the root cause, you have to ask yourself, is it worth spending a load of money on fancy things then? Well, if you're not treating the root cause, no. Like I honestly think, just get a load of vitamin B3 or something like that, and then you're good. You don't have to worry. It can be very cheap as well if you go to places like The Ordinary or the Inculist. It can be more expensive if you get something personally compounded, but not that much more expensive. It's not ridiculous. But other skincare, what's the point? Unless you're treating the root cause, what is the point? Don't fall for the marketing, okay? The next section I want to go through, supplements. I'm not going to go through every single one, as much as some of you may wish me to. But again, I want to give you a perspective. First of all, what is a supplement? It's something that is, in lieu of something you are not getting in your diet. Here's how I work with supplements. If I suspect there is a deficiency of something in someone's diet, let's say iodine as an example, I'll say, look, buy an iodine supplement, buy this one. Let's take a course of it and see what happens. And the symptoms improve. That doesn't mean, right, keep on buying iodine then. That means, right, you need to change your diet to have that in there as nature intended, instead of relying on buying a supplement the entire time. So when it comes to supplements, most of my patients, it's a one-time thing, simply for diagnosis, and that's it. And when it comes to acne, if you find a certain supplement does work somehow, and I'll get to that in a second, doesn't mean you need to keep buying that. It means you need to ask yourself, why is that not in my diet in the first place? Okay, and you have to also understand the difference between supplements and nutraceuticals. A supplement is something that is replacing something in your diet because you're not getting it in your diet, really. A nutraceutical is not something that you are not getting in your diet. It's something which is like a bonus, which improves the way in which your body is working, the physiological function. That's it, they're completely different. So a supplement is maybe something that you give to someone who has eating difficulties. So they need a meal replacement shake or something along those lines. A nutraceutical is for someone who can eat fine and they've got everything they need, but this is like a little bit of bonus. It's a particular extract of something which improves this or it improves that, or it's a particular formula of amino acids, which is not taken to get more amino acids in, but for a specific effect because of the way they're formulated. And it does this to your mitochondria or something like that. I take one of those. And so that's the difference between supplements and nutraceuticals. You have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm looking at? Is it a supplement or is it a nutraceutical? If it's a supplement and it helps, it doesn't mean you need to keep buying it. It means you need to alter your diet. Most of the things we're seeing are actually nutraceuticals. So nutraceuticals, if you take one, first of all, I don't think any of them are going to treat it. Acne is not caused by a lack of a nutraceutical. It's, in my view, it's caused largely in the things that we are meant to have in our diet, not the bonus things. And so even if you have it, if you're not treating the root cause, again, what is the point? Like, you may get some relief, but what are you going to do? Keep on taking that for the rest of your life? What's the point, honestly? So supplements and nutraceuticals in general for acne specifically, I don't think are worth it at all. And if you think about it, if your problem is with the skin and you take these things orally, how much of it is left by the time it goes through the digestive tract and the digestion process? A lot less than what you started with. Once it's in the bloodstream, how can you control where it goes? You can't. You have no conscious control of when something enters your bloodstream, where it gets dropped off. It's like hiring a taxi and not being able to know where it's taking you. That's what it is here, basically. And a lot of people will think, oh, you got to take like tablet hyaluronic acid or tablet collagen or whatever. Once you take that, how can you control where it's going? How can you make it go to the skin? You literally can't. Okay, it's just nonsense. And there are no valid studies on supplements or nutraceuticals in terms of showing cause and effect by using epidemiology. You can't. Biochemistry, fine, that's absolutely fantastic, actually, that's the best way. But when it says 13 people took this and 60% of them thought it was great, that's nothing. And most of the time when it comes to supplements or nutraceuticals, that's what you get. So in general, don't waste your money. I don't think you need any of those. If you're a sort of person that needs a supplement, try one. If it works, don't keep buying it. Change your diet so you have that in there naturally. I don't think there's a lot more to say about that when it comes to acne. I don't think anything really works for acne as a supplement or nutraceutical. The next one is, as you can see on screen now, medication. So medication is an option for acne. Many of you may have heard of things like Roaccutane or isotretinoin, kind of the same thing basically. These are, I mentioned earlier in the skincare section, you have the retinoid spectrum, and the most biologically active form that we find in the body is the retinoic acid. Basically, you can take that in a tablet form, ATRA or trans-retinoic acid. And when you take it in a tablet form, the dose your body receives is just exceptionally high. And it has to be high because one of the first ports of call for vitamin A when it's in our, I was going to say diet, but when we take it orally, is places like the eye. Hence why they're called retinoids. It's named after the retina in the eye. And the liver is also going to store the majority of the body's vitamin A. Some people will say figures such as 92% of the body's vitamin A is stored in the liver. And then everything else gets it after those areas. And the skin is kind of the lowest one on this clipboard of priority. So unless you have a very high dose, there's not enough left over after everyone else has had a piece in your body for the skin to have its cake and eat it as well. But then you've got a problem with the exceptionally high dose of that vitamin A. This is why typically when you take these medications, you have to have a liver function test and a kidney function test to make sure that you can tolerate things like that. And there are people that have had psychological side effects, shall we say. I'm not going to go into them, but you can Google them. And this is simply because the body is not designed, in my opinion at least, it's not evolved to need such a large dose of vitamin A in one go. And so I think that's why we potentially sometimes find problems with these things. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't work, because it can work. I used isotretinoin when I was a teenager, and luckily it worked. Luckily, I did not have liver issues or anything like that, and it was fine. And I'm very happy with the result. But would I take it if I could go back in time? No, never. You couldn't pay me to. I would rather have done it through diet, knowing what I know now, and with all the patients that I work with, and they're very happy because we do that. And I actually don't get them, if possible, I get them to spend nothing. We just change the diet, no skincare, nothing. And so medication can work, but there are risks associated with it. So you've got to be very, very careful. So if you are going to take the medication, don't overdose on vitamin A. Don't take any of the vitamin A supplements or anything like that. Make sure you have the liver function test and the kidney function test. Make sure you speak to your dermatologist thoroughly to make sure you're suitable for it. And if you still want to go for it, fine, go for it. But I don't personally recommend it because I'm sorry, your organs are not designed to tackle or handle that much vitamin A, at least in my opinion, for what it's worth. And based on the fact that without using it, pretty systematically, I've gotten rid of the acne for many, many patients. I don't think it's crucial. I don't think it's essential. I don't think it's the first port of call, but it's an option in some areas, and it can work, not that it will. So the next one, 10 years of wisdom. So what I want to go through is how you actually put all these things together. If you're watching this and you think, well, he said LED works, he said, you know, that skincare ingredient can work, he said this tablet can work, so does that mean I take all of them? And knowing these things and actually applying them clinically are two different things. This is not necessarily something that you as a member of the public are going to be trained in. You're probably not going to be trained in it unless you're medical in some way. Something that I was trained in, something that other healthcare professionals are trained in. That's for us to know how do we, which of these pieces do we put together for this individual or that individual or that individual. But there's a few principles that I've written down here, which I wanted to make sure I got through. The first principle is the consult style. If you go and see someone, you have the conversation, you ask all your questions, you get the answers, and you're given something and then you go away. The problem with that is that advice you were given may have changed if the person giving that advice to you could see the way your skin reacted when you first did it, first used this tablet or this skincare. And they may say, actually, no, based on what I've seen there, you're better off doing this now. But you'll never know because that's a one-time consultation, maybe a follow-up in a few months. I don't think that's good enough for acne. My advice to you is work with someone in a way where things can be modified on the fly. I think communication systems have to change with our patients when it comes to treating things like this. Hence why, again, I'll link it in the description below. I have a group where I work one-to-one with patients, and it's in a written sort of online forum style thing. And each person has their own post, and we reply to each other on those posts, and they can follow everything that we've ever said. I can put a link in, they won't lose it because it's saved there. I can say, this or that advice. I don't have to remember it because it's always written. They can ask me questions any time of the day, any day they like, and we can go back and forth every day. And we do. That is the way I hope things will go in this particular field of dermatology. I think things which require constant supervision should be dealt with in a system which allows for constant supervision, which we don't currently have. And so that's why I work in that way. If you can't work with someone who does that, because I don't know many people that do that apart from me, to be honest, see if you can establish some sort of communication line where you can say, look, I've tried the cream for a week, this has happened, so that they can then reply, okay, let's change it. You need to be able to have an ongoing communication, not a one-time thing. And that's crucial for acne, because if you are making dietary changes, how can you supervise someone's diet by having one conversation? That's impossible. You look at people that work in a similar space to me, have similar views in terms of diet. Let's take two fantastic YouTube channels, Richard Smith, nutritionist, and Coach Stephen Thomas. Both of those guys supervise diet changes and diet transitions all the time. And it's not a one-time thing. They check in all the time because you have to, because you wait for feedback and say, oh, okay, you took that out too soon. Let's put some back in and slowly lower it. And if you don't have a constant communication, you're not going to be able to do that. So consult style is key. You have to go longer term. And that's why I work the way I work. And that's why those guys work the way they work as well. Don't do something where you have to keep paying a few $100s to see them every few months. I just think that's useless, frankly. Something else I would say is LED is, if I had to pick one treatment modality out of all the things I've said today, not including diet, I would pick LED. The ease, the cheapness, the non-invasiveness, the longevity of it, how long it lasts for, even after the acne, for years. For £80, that mask is astonishing. I'm not saying you have to get that. If you want to get something else, fine. Go get something else. Doesn't make any difference to me. I make no money. But for the return on investment, when it comes to acne specifically, I think it's fantastic. Even if you go to a clinic for a Dermalux Tri-Wave MD treatment, which is fantastic, by the way, now you'll probably need to go at least 2 or 3 times a week for a few weeks, depending on the individual. There are exceptions. However, there's a cost of time and effort and petrol or bus ticket or train ticket or whatever to get there. You have a mask, you can just sit around and use that all day if you want. So I think the LED, if I had to pick one treatment modality, my advice to you, invest in a good quality LED mask like the one I said, and that will serve you for a very, very, very long time. If you have that, frankly, you don't need to spend money on much else. If you want to spend a little bit more on skincare, fine, don't buy a whole load of it, but that's all you need. So don't worry too much beyond that. LED, yes. Another thing that I want to mention, again, should come up on screen, is that the root cause, as I said before, is the most important, not just because it means things aren't going to come back, but because you're safe. If something comes back, fine, you're going to treat it again. But think about the psychological torment you have that acne is causing you. And I say that because I had it. It may not be hard to believe now, but that's because of my job. Like, I know what to do or not to do. But if it comes back, you're going to wake up in the morning still looking in the mirror thinking, what's come up today that wasn't there yesterday? Honestly, that's no way to live, to have to go through that every single day. I have been there. It was terrible. I cannot stress enough how if you do things properly and you address the diet first in an elimination way, you'll never have to worry if you find that root cause. Because the fact that you found the root cause means you have actually treated it. And then you can go into treating the remnants of acne, pigmentation, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, indentation or scarring, things like that. And then you can treat those things without having to worry about more coming up because the cause is gone now. That's why there's no point treating things like acne marks or acne scars while acne is still active. Because even if you treat them, the fact that it's active means you could get some more next week. So in the acne journey, we've got other things to treat as well, the things that acne leaves behind. But you can't get there if you don't treat the root cause and you stop it in its tracks. Because otherwise you're just going to be on this treadmill your entire life. So always, go back to nutrition, look at those things, work with someone one-on-one if you can, because the diet is very, very individualized in terms of the transition, and work out that root cause. And another thing that I want to say is exceptions do exist. The things I've said in this video are for the vast majority of people, and I'm speaking very, very generally. Exceptions to every single thing that I've said do exist. And so don't think that just following this video is going to clear your acne, because it's highly possible that it won't, because you're the exception based on your individual skin history or medical history or skincare combination or anything like that. So please don't think that just following this video is going to clear everything. Exceptions exist. Another thing that I want to say is I haven't covered literally every single skincare ingredient or device or supplement or nutraceutical or whatever else. There are lots of things out there, and I've left those out because I can't talk about everything in one video. I can make updates to this video, and I'm sure I will. Now, once you have the acne disappeared, the next thing that you will want to do is look at how do I treat, like I said, scars, the main thing, and also what are right here, pigmentation. Once you're beyond those two, then you go into another category. Then you're into the region of how do I just get the best looking skin? I'm not trying to treat disease. I'm trying to go out. I've gone out of disease. Now I want to go into the cosmetic, into the youthfulness, the rejuvenation. That's the full journey, okay? When I take a patient out of acne, we then treat the scars and pigmentation. Once that's gone, then we just get everything looking as fantastic as possible. For that section, I have a video that is already out by the time you see this. It's like a skin tightening guide, 2.5 hours. There's a lot of information there, lots of different options. I talk about all of them in detail, just like in this video. And what will happen after I record this, at some point I will do a video on the remnants of acne, the scarring and the pigmentation, like an acne scar video as well. So you could go from this one to that one and then the tightening video as well. So whatever you do in your treatment, have that journey planned out. So for example, if you're seeing someone and you're paying for all this treatment, factor in the fact that you've already got scars, put that into my treatment plan for afterwards so I can get a rough price as well and get a discount on doing them all together. So don't think that a lot of the stuff we do here today is going to treat scars. So for example, LED, I said LED is great. LED isn't necessarily going to get rid of every scar, because sometimes the scar is a physical thing. There's scar tissue physically underneath the skin and it's tethered. Shining a light on is not going to break up a tether underneath. So the issue is physical. The treatment sometimes needs to be physical as well to match that. So for that reason, assume that what you've got in this video is a way to try and target the disease process, the pathophysiology. It's not going to necessarily target the remnants, the leftover symptoms of acne. That is something entirely different. So don't fall for things where, one cream is going to get rid of every scar. It's always impossible to get rid of proper physical tethered scars using just a cream above. So expect a completely different set of perspectives and advice, possibly devices and skincare when it comes to that scar treatment, if possible. And I think the last thing I want to say is, don't think if you spend more money, you will get a better result. Most of my patients that I work with when it comes to acne, and if you join the one-to-one group where I supervise your acne for 6 months, 12 months, however long you wish, it's on a monthly thing, most of them don't really spend very much at all. Some of them get the LED mask for €100 and that's it. The rest of it, we don't spend any money. Like in skincare, if they do want something, then we'll just get a cheap niacinamide product or something along those lines, and they spend practically nothing. In total, most patients that are with me in that supervised scheme for, let's say they spend a year with me, in total, they may have spent, I don't know, a couple £100, £200 for the year, which is nothing in total. And half of that is going to be for the LED mask, and that's it. So please don't fall for marketing which makes you think if you spend more, you're going to get more. If you do more, you're going to get a quicker result. If it feels nice to the touch, you're treating things on the inside of the skin. This is all nonsense. Acne has to be treated by the root cause, and I think diet and nutrition is always key. Always. If you are interested in joining my school group where I teach things like this multiple times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, which is where the inspiration for this video actually came from, by the way, because we had an acne live call on that. Link is in the description below. If you want me to supervise you for acne, looking at all these things at the same time, doing things in a way where we can modify things every day if we need, the link for that is in the description below as well. But overall, I hope I've not bored you too much. I know I drone on quite a lot. I'm very sorry. But thank you very much for watching.